the Transfiguration. Jesus and his two disciples go up the mountain, and there they find Elijah and Moses. And God comes down and said, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." And this is the second time in the Gospel of Mark that God says this. The first time was at the baptism. And both times are right before Jesus is about to go through something very hard. The first time, he was about to go face the devil in temptation. This time, he's on the road to Jerusalem. He will be going to face his death. And so, it is important that he comes into close contact with God because he needs to recharge. And it is on the mountaintops that we can recharge. Moses went up the mountain to talk to God and receive the Ten Commandments. Elijah went up the mountain, and there came the fire, the winds, and the earthquakes, and then finally a still small voice that was God. And now Jesus and the disciples go up the mountain, and there they find God. Everyone has high points. Everyone has mountaintops. I want you to think back on your lives. Think of some of those mountaintops. Maybe it was seeing your firstborn child for the first time. Maybe it was standing at the altar, looking at the person that you love and saying, "I do." Maybe it's singing a hymn that just sends chills up and down your spine. Or going into a store to buy supplies for your ministry and having someone remember from their childhood how that ministry affected their lives so long ago. Maybe it's that thank you after you cook something for a church gathering and you know that everyone is enjoying it, and that gives you just enough to want to do it again and again and again. Those high points, those things, those times where you come into close contact with God, and God can sustain you through all of the ministries that take place in the valleys. Because that's where we work. We work in the valleys. But we need those high points, those places that we can remember what it means to be in close contact with God, so that we have the faith and the encouragement and the joy to push through some of those hard times and to persevere when everything looks bleak. I can remember my major mountaintop, the highest point in my life when I was closest to God. I was in college, in campus ministry. And I spent every day at my campus ministry doing something, whether it was Bible study, devotional lunch, prayer groups, service. Every day I was immersed in God, and it is in that time that God came and really made me realize how important it was for me to continue on and to push for entering into ministry. It is what drove me to want to go to seminary. It is what drives me to want to be a pastor. It is what drives me to want to help rethink the church and to fill these pews with people who need to experience God at those mountaintops. The story continues, though. After they come into contact with God, Jesus and the disciples have to descend from the mountaintop. Notice Elijah and Moses don't have to descend. They get to go back and stay with God. But that is because their time had passed. But everyone else comes down off of that mountaintop and has to enter into ministries in the world. All of us are the disciples with Jesus. We come down off of those mountaintops and we have work to do, much work. It's not our time of rest yet. That time may come soon, but it's not here now. Now is the time for our ministries to finish what God called us to. And our ministries, like Jesus, will be transfigured by the times that we spend on those mountaintops. And we need to be willing to allow ourselves, our ministries, to be transfigured. Especially as we're coming into the season of Lent. A time of self-reflection, reflection on our church. We all should be looking at places where we can do our ministries better, where we can change out of the drabber garments and put on that pure, white, radiant garment that God gives us. The places where we can leave something behind and move on to embrace something new, something that causes everyone else to know that they are in the presence of God and Jesus. That radiant white garment that comes from the top of the mountain. And so, as we enter this season of Lent, find those places. Think about where you can do something different. Go out and help the needy, where we can do something different in worship that may do something to reach others, to change this worship service, to meet the needs of all of those people who are out there, all around us, who are not in here. Maybe we can find studies or events that go, and mission groups that go and do things to reach all of those people that aren't in this room right now. It's not to say that we forget about those people in this room, because we're all important. We all need to continue to have our mountaintops because those are what sustain us. But we also need to find ways to help others up the mountain. We need to become like Jesus and bring disciples up the mountain with us. It was done for us. We were all brought to church at some point. Whether God did it, whether your parents did it, your friends did it, somebody brought you up that mountain. And so as we go into Lent, think of all the people and all of the ways that you can bring someone else up the mountain. Amen.
Let us continue our worship with our song.